I want you to just try and picture something for a minute. 3.5 million pages.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to stack that up, standard printer paper, page by page, you are looking at a tower that would absolutely dwarf the Statue of Liberty.
It would probably rival the Empire State Building, yeah.
That is the scale of the data dump the Department of Justice and the FBI just dropped on the world.
Yeah.
January 30th, 2026.
And it is a data dump in the most aggressive sense of the word. It's overwhelming by design.
Right.
You drop a haystack that big, and the assumption is nobody is ever going to find the needles.
And usually, that works. But for this deep dive, we are looking at an analysis from a source called Upper Echelon that says we don't even need to look for needles.
No.
Their argument is that the haystack itself is on fire, because this is not just a story about Jeffrey Epstein anymore.
It really isn't, and that's the absolute pivot point for this whole thing. If you go into these files just looking for, the same old Epstein stories, you're missing the forest for the trees. The Upper Echelon analysis argues that these files document a historic, systemic breakdown of the U.S. government.
A breakdown.
We were talking about a level of incompetence, of technical failure so severe that it exposes the private lives of billionaires, politicians, and this is the tragic part, the victims the government explicitly swore they were protecting.
We're absolutely going to get into the names.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. We're talking Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, even people sitting in the cabinet right now.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the who, we have to look at the how. Because the official story from that DOJ press conference was incredibly self-congratulatory.
Oh, absolutely. You had Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, standing there at the podium. And about 4 minutes in, he makes this very specific, very confident point.
What do you say?
He told the press that the redaction process was strict and that the administration's work was, and I'm quoting, unimpeachable.
Unimpeachable. That's a dangerous word to throw around when the entire internet is watching.
It's a dare. The promise was, look, we're releasing everything. Nothing is hidden for national security. And those black bars you see, they are solely, strictly to protect the victims.
Which sounds noble. It sounds responsible.
Of course.
And that narrative held up for what, a few minutes? Exactly as long as it took for people to download the PDFs.
And as soon as the files opened, that unimpeachable narrative didn't just crack, it shattered.
Upper Echelon went through these files with a fine-tooth comb, and what they found suggests the redactions, the very tool meant to protect people, were done with a clumsiness that borders on criminal negligence.
So let's talk about these glitches, because when I read this part of the analysis, I honestly thought it was satire.
Me too.
We're not talking about some advanced cryptography failure here. We're not talking about hackers breaking a code.
Not at all.
We are talking about the black boxes they use to cover text.
Yeah.
Literally not being centered.
You can see the letters peeking out from the top or bottom.
Exactly. You can just read the text underneath it in some cases. Like they used a digital highlighter instead of a blackout pen.
Wow.
And then you have what I'd call phantom redactions. There are documents where they've redacted the word none.
The word none?
Yes. Just the word none. It makes zero sense. Legally, logically, it just suggests a human being wasn't even reading these things.
But the one that really blew my mind, and I think this just proves the incompetence theory more than anything, is the Wikipedia blunder. You have to walk us through this. It sounds impossible.
It is baffling. So buried in this massive data dump is a printout of a 2022 Wikipedia article about Donald Trump.
Okay, Wikipedia, public record.
Exactly. It's on the open internet. Anyone listening can go read it right now. It's not classified information.
Right.
And yet the DOJ's redaction team went through this public Wikipedia article and censored specific words.
What did they censor?
They blacked out the word Italia. They blacked out D.C. And most bizarrely, they redacted the name Stone.
As in Roger Stone.
As in Roger Stone. But, and this is the key part, only once.
Wait, what?
The source notes that Stone's name appears 7 other times in that same article, completely untouched. But in one random sentence, they decided it was a state secret.
That just screams automation to me. That's not a lawyer making a judgment call. That's a glitchy script.
That is the leading theory. We'll get to the whole AI hypothesis later, but this example just shatters the idea of a strict legal review.
Oh, yeah. If you can't properly identify a public Wikipedia page, how can you be trusted with sensitive national security info?
Or, more importantly, the identity of a victim.
Exactly.
And that's where this stops being funny and starts getting really dangerous. The source identifies what they call the peekaboo effect.
Okay.
This is where a name is redacted in one line of a document, to protect someone, but then it's fully visible in the very next line.
That is just incredibly lazy. Do we have specific examples of who was exposed by this?
There's a really stark one involving Harry Tanoeso-Dibjo.
The Indonesian billionaire politician?
Yeah, that's him. In the files, his name is blacked out in one section, and then 3 inches down the page, there it is, clear as day.
So the protection is just an illusion.
Completely. And there's another case with a man named Alan Jones. In a 2014 email, Epstein is talking with a redacted person. But the source did a file comparison and found a duplicate document in that version, untouched. Alan Jones's name, right there.
They have multiple copies of the same files and they redacted them differently. That shows a complete lack of any kind of version control.
It does, but if you want the absolute smoking gun of negligence, you have to look at the triple threat failure. It's arguably the most damning piece of evidence in the whole dump about the DOJ's failure.
This involves that specific, that very graphic allegation against Trump and Epstein,
Yeah.
right, with the 13-year-old.
Yes. We won't go into the details, but there's a very disturbing allegation involving a young victim. Now, the DOJ released 3 versions of this same document scattered throughout the dump.
Okay, so 3 versions.
In version A, they redacted the victim's name. In version B, they redacted the address where the incident allegedly happened.
Right.
And in version C, they redacted the case number.
I think I see exactly where this is going.
Because they released all 3, people online, they overlaid the documents. You can see the name from one, the address from another, and the case number from the third.
So the DOJ effectively doxed a victim.
A victim of a heinous crime. They handed the internet a puzzle that reveals their identity, all while claiming they were protecting them.
That is, it's beyond negligence. It's a violation. If I were that victim, I'd be looking at suing the Department of Justice immediately.
It just renders that whole "we're protecting the victims" line completely void. It proves the unimpeachable work was a disaster.
So we've established the whole release was broken on a technical level. Let's talk about what was exposed by these glitches, because this incompetence stripped away the cover for some very powerful people.
It really did. And the source focuses heavily on the tech sector. For years, we've heard the same denials from Silicon Valley, right? I met him once. I didn't know who he was. I regret it.
And Elon Musk is probably the loudest on that front.
He is. Musk has been on a PR warpath. He said he refused an invite to Epstein's island, called the accusations misleading. He even threw Prince Andrew under the bus recently to create distance.
The classic, look at that guy, not me, defense.
Right. But the private emails from 2012 tell a very different story. And remember the timeline. 2012 is 4 years after Epstein was a convicted and registered sex offender.
So this wasn't early days. Everybody knew.
Everybody knew. So what do the emails say? Musk writes to Epstein in 2012 and asks, quote, "What day night will be the wildest party on your island?"
Wildest party.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a business meeting about rockets.
It implies he's looking for something very specific. And then there's the exchange about his then-wife, Tallulah Riley, who's called Tula. Epstein actually warns Musk. He says, "The ratio on my island might make Tula uncomfortable."
The ratio. We need to pause on that word. In the context of Epstein's world, that's not a math term. It's a very dark euphemism.
It's commodification. It's the number of young women per man. Epstein is explicitly telling Musk, there are going to be a lot of girls here and your wife might not like it.
And Musk's response.
Ratio is not a problem.
Wow.
Now, the source is careful here. They do note it doesn't look like Musk actually went to that specific party. But the intent, the comfort level, he wasn't refusing an invite, he was asking for one.
It shows a familiarity. You don't ask a convicted sex offender about the ratio unless you're comfortable with what that means.
Precisely. And that comfort level, it extends to Bill Gates, too. We've known Gates had meetings. We've heard the philanthropy excuse.
I was trying to get funding for global health line.
Yes, but the source found an email that shifts the dynamic into something much more personal and strange.
This is the medical email.
It is. Gates allegedly emailed Epstein about a medical issue. Specifically, he asks Epstein for antibiotics to treat an STD.
I have to stop you. Why would Bill Gates, one of the richest men on earth, ask a disgraced financier for antibiotics? He has access to the best doctors in the world.
That's the key. He didn't want a doctor. The email allegedly states that Gates wanted the drugs so he could surreptitiously give them to his wife, Melinda, without her knowing.
Surreptitiously. He wanted to drug his wife.
To treat an infection he presumably brought into the marriage without having that conversation. And Epstein replies, acknowledging that this topic must remain between the two of us.
That sounds like leverage.
It's the definition of blackmail material. If you look at Melinda Gates's interviews after the divorce, she called Epstein evil personified.
Right. She said the relationship was a breaking point.
And when you read this email, that reaction makes so much more sense. It wasn't just that Bill was hanging out with a bad guy. It was that the bad guy held deep secrets about their marriage.
So let's zoom out from the tech world to the people actually running the country. Because the upper echelon analysis really emphasizes this isn't a partisan hit job. It's not about Republicans or Democrats.
No, it's about the elites versus the truth. That's the only way to read these files. Let's look at Donald Trump again. We mentioned the triple threat document, but there's more. The files contain logs from the FBI's National Threat Operations Center.
These are basically tips from the public, correct?
Correct. And a lot are marked not credible, which is normal. But the source noticed a weird redaction pattern here, too. There's a file discussing incidents involving police, and then the DOJ redacted a section specifically about mandatory psychiatric evaluations.
Why hide that if it's just a crazy tip? That seems oddly specific.
That's the question. But more concrete is the FD 302.
And remind us, an FD 302 is what?
It's the formal report an FBI agent writes up after interviewing a witness or a victim, the official record. And this one describes a victim's interaction with Ghislaine Maxwell at Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
Maxwell allegedly presented the victim to Trump. She told the victim, I think he likes you, and then gives her a tour of the club with both Epstein and Trump there.
I think he likes you. That is classic grooming language.
It establishes the social triangle. Maxwell, Epstein, Trump, all operating in the same space with the same assets. The source argues this just contradicts the Democrat hoax narrative that Trump was just a casual acquaintance.
But it's not just the former president. The files implicate people in power right now in 2026.
And this is where the vetting process comes into question. Take Howard Lutnick, the current Secretary of Commerce.
Right.
Publicly, Lutnick has been adamant. He said he cut ties with Epstein in 2005 because he found him gross.
A very moral stance. He's gross, we're out.
Except the emails show Lutnick planning lunch on Epstein's island in 2012.
That's 7 years after he supposedly cut ties.
Exactly. You don't fly to a private island for lunch with someone you find that gross.
And what about Kevin Walsh, the nominee for Fed chair?
The flight logs and visitor logs place him on the island as well. So you have the man running the nation's commerce and the man nominated to run its currency, both in the orbit of a sex trafficker long after his conviction.
It makes you wonder if the vetting process is broken or if they just don't care.
Or, as the source suggests, maybe the corruption is so widespread you can't form a government of elites without these connections. It's baked in.
That's a dark thought. But we have to go darker. We've talked about parties and influence, but these files, they contain evidence of crimes that go way beyond that. The Russian connection and the torture emails.
This is where it shifts from a sleazy billionaire club to organized crime and intelligence. The source highlights an email chain between Epstein and Sergei Belikov.
The Russian deputy economic minister, a high-ranking official.
Yes. The emails discuss a situation with a Russian girl who was allegedly blackmailing powerful businessmen in New York.
Blackmail. There's that word again.
It's the key. Epstein writes to Belikov saying this girl is bad for business. He offers to help handle it.
So this is proof of a blackmail ring.
The source theorizes it is. The DOJ has always claimed Epstein was a lone wolf. But here he is, coordinating with a foreign government official to silence a woman compromising powerful American men. That sounds like an intelligence operation.
Like a honey trap cleanup crew.
It aligns with all those long-standing theories about Epstein being an intelligence asset. He wasn't just trafficking women for pleasure, he was trafficking them for control.
And then the torture emails. This is tough to hear, but it's in the files.
It is. These emails strip away any last bit of glamour. There is an exchange with a hedge fund figure named Tonkery Mariolo. Epstein emails him about a specific woman, and he asks, just casually, do you want me to try to do her or just torture her?
Just torture, like he's offering a menu option.
It's the banality that is so terrifying. And there's another email where Epstein asks someone if they loved the torture video.
So they were recording it.
That's the implication. And this brings us back to the DOJ's failure. We have names, Mariolo, Belikov, in black and white, mentions of videos, blackmail, and yet who's being prosecuted?
Nobody.
The source emphasizes this. We are seeing a file dump that was supposedly scrubbed to protect victims, yet it leaves these perpetrators exposed while also failing to protect the victims because of incompetence. It's the worst of all worlds.
So if we pull this all together,
Mm.
what is the final conclusion? We have a government that claims transparency,
Mm.
but can't redact a Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
We have billionaires who claim innocence while emailing about ratios.
Torture videos, Russian blackmail rings.
What does upper echelon think is actually happening here?
If you synthesize their argument, it comes down to a frightening reality.
Oh, please.
The elites, Musk, Gates, Trump, Lutnick, they all lied about their associations. That's a fact. But the institutions meant to hold them accountable, the DOJ and the FBI, are either too corrupt to prosecute or...
Or too incompetent to even cover it up properly.
Exactly. The source had that theory about the incompetence, right? The AI theory.
Mm-hmm.
The errors are so nonsensical, redacting none, missing Roger Stone's name, that the source suspects the government just used a cheap automated AI program to handle the redactions.
Because a human would know Roger Stone is a name, and AI might just see a pattern of letters.
Or it flagged the word none because of a coding error. It explains why the mistakes are so sporadic and illogical. They just fed 3.5 million pages into a machine and hit print.
Which is terrifying. We're relying on a glitchy bot to protect victim identities.
And that leads to the final provocative thought from the source. It challenges our entire worldview. We tend to see the government as this all-powerful, all-knowing entity playing 4D chess. But if they can't successfully redact a Wikipedia article,
How can we trust them on national security?
how can we trust their competence on anything? The source describes them not as evil geniuses, but as corrupt, self-dealing, manipulative snakes, who are also, frankly, morons.
It shatters the illusion. They aren't all powerful. They're just powerful enough to cause immense damage, but too incompetent to fix it.
And the files prove it. The truth isn't just in the words, it's in the errors. The black bars that miss the text tell the real story of the state of our union.
Well, that is a heavy thought to leave you with.
It is.
The source, Upper Echelon, encourages everyone to go look at these glitches for yourselves before the files get scrubbed or re-uploaded. Because in this level of chaos, things have a way of disappearing.
Trust the documents, not the press conference.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and maybe check your own redactions twice. We'll see you next time.
Imagine a town where you couldn't buy bread without someone checking your shoes first. They called it the town of bent necks because everyone looked down before looking up. This wasn't fashion. It was a civil war between two brothers, Adi and Rudolf Dassler, the creators of Adidas and Puma. Adi was the craftsman, obsessing over every single stitch. Rudd was the salesman, the loud voice who could sell ice to a polar bear. Together, they were the perfect team, the Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory. Before the billions, there was just a mother's tiny laundry room in 1920s Germany. But as their success grew, so did the darkness in Germany. 1936, the Berlin Olympics. The Nazis wanted to showcase Aryan superiority, but Adi Dassler had a different plan. He wanted the fastest man on Earth. He drove to the village and convinced American sprinter Jesse Owens to wear his spikes. When Owens won 4 gold medals, the Dassler shoes became world famous. Business exploded. But inside the family, the bomb was about to go off. The brothers began to resent each other. Wives fought. Paranoia set in. Then came World War II. The factory was converted to make weapons. The breaking point happened in an air raid shelter in 1943. Adi and his wife climbed in. Rudolph was already there. Adi said, "The dirty bastards are back." Adi meant the Allied bombers overhead, but Rudolph thought he meant him. That one sentence shattered the brotherhood forever. After the war, the hatred was so deep it couldn't even work in the same building. 1948. The company was split in half. 80 named his company Adidas. Rudolph named it Ruda, then changed it to Puma. They built factories on opposite sides of the Arak River. And then they forced the entire town to pick a side. If you worked for Puma, you didn't talk to someone from Adidas. Pubs became segregated. Bakeries became loyalist strongholds. There were even rumors that Puma workers wouldn't date Adidas workers. It became a town of spies. The brothers watched each other like hawks. Rudolph was the aggressor, always trying to steal Adi's athletes. But Adi had the product. He invented the screw-in studs for the 1954 World Cup. Germany won the World Cup in Adidas. It was a national miracle. Rudolph was furious. He felt his brother had stolen history from him. The rivalry fueled innovation. Every year, the shoes got lighter, faster, better. They sued each other constantly. It wasn't business anymore. It was personal. Even the river that divided them seemed to run with bad blood. The feud lasted until the day they died. Rudolph died in 1974. Adi died 4 years later. Even in death, they refused to be near each other. They are buried at opposite ends of the same cemetery. Today, employees from both companies finally play soccer together. The town has healed, but the legacy of the split remains. Two of the biggest sports brands in history. Built not on love, but on a lifetime of hatred. Built not on love, but on a lifetime of hatred. Sometimes, the best motivation is an enemy across the river.
In 1962, a wealthy man walked into the Ferrari factory with a simple complaint. He was about to receive the most expensive insult in automotive history. This isn't just a story about cars. It's a story about pure, unfiltered ego. Meet Ferruccio Lamborghini. Before the supercars, he was the tractor king. He made a fortune rebuilding military surplus machines for Italian farmers. He was rich, loud, and he loved to drive fast. He bought a Ferrari 250 GT, the ultimate status symbol of the era. But there was a problem. The car was beautiful, but it was fragile. The clutch kept burning out. It couldn't handle Ferruccio's driving. Being a master mechanic, Ferruccio decided to fix it himself. He took the transmission apart and discovered something very shocking. The clutch in his expensive Ferrari was the exact same part he used in his tractors. Enzo Ferrari was charging 10 times the price for a $10 farm component. Furious, Ferruccio drove to Maranello to confront the commendatore himself. Enzo Ferrari was a god in Italy. You didn't just walk into his office. But Ferruccio was a wealthy industrialist. He demanded a meeting. When he finally faced Enzo, he didn't hold back. He said, "Ferrari, your cars are rubbish. I'll show you how to build sports cars." Enzo looked at the tractor mechanic and delivered the line that changed history. "You may be able to drive a tractor, but you will never be able to handle a Ferrari." Ferruccio was kicked out. Most men would have been humiliated. But Ferruccio Lamborghini was not most men. He was motivated by spite. He then returned to his house and gathered his family for an announcement. He announced, "I will build a car to wipe the floor with Ferrari." He started building a new factory in Sant'Agata, just down the road from Ferrari. He didn't just want a car, he wanted a revolution. and he knew exactly where to find the talent to build it. The engineer was working day and night to get the best supercar. Ferruccio hired them immediately. He paid them double. They drew the best design they could have. In 1964, the first Lamborghini 350 GT rolled out. It was good, but it wasn't a Ferrari killer yet. Ferruccio needed a weapon, something the world had never seen. His engineers proposed a radical idea. Put the engine in the middle. Enzo had always said, "The horse pulls the cart, it doesn't push it." Lamborghini decided the horse was wrong. He built the Miura. Yes, it's officially here. It was the most beautiful car on earth. It was low, wide, and looked like it was going 100 miles an hour while parked. They unveiled it at the 1966 Geneva Motor Show. It stole the show. Nobody was looking at the Ferraris. The term supercar was literally invented to describe the Miura. Enzo was furious. The tractor mechanic had beaten him. Ferruccio chose a bull as his logo. Why? Because he was a Taurus and because it was the only thing that could kill a horse. Today, that rivalry pushes the limits of engineering every single year. And it all started because one man was too proud to fix a clutch. Enzo Ferrari created his own greatest enemy. Are you Team Ferrari or Team Lamborghini? Let us know. Subscribe for more stories of the industrial titans. In September 2000, two men walked into a boardroom in Dallas with a desperate offer. They were offering to sell their struggling startup for just $50 million. The executives across the table didn't just say no. That laugh would go down as the most expensive mistake in business history. To understand the arrogance, you have to remember what the year 2000 felt like. Blockbuster wasn't just a store. It was the king of Friday night. It was a cash printing machine with 9,000 stores globally. They made $800 million a year just from late fees. They felt invincible, like the Roman Empire at its peak. On the other side of the tracks, there was Netflix. In 2000, Netflix wasn't a streaming giant. It was a mail service disaster. They were bleeding money. The dot-com bubble had just burst. Reed Hastings was worried. The company was on track to go bankrupt. They needed a lifeline. They needed to sell to the big guys. So they booked a flight to Dallas to meet the Blockbuster CEO. The Netflix team was nervous. They didn't even have tailored suits. They arrived at the Renaissance Tower, a glass fortress of corporate power. They took the elevator to the top floor. The air was thin. They walked into the boardroom. Mahogany table, expensive art. The Blockbuster executives arrived late, a classic power move. When the CEO finally sat down, he didn't offer them water. Reed made his pitch. "We will run your online brand. You run the stores." Then the Blockbuster CEO asked the million-dollar question. "How much money do you want for this?" Reed took a breath and said, $50 million. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. And then the Blockbuster team started struggling to hold back laughter. The CEO smiled and said, "The dot-com hysteria is completely overblown. They saw Netflix as a gnat, a tiny, annoying insect. The meeting ended. No deal. Netflix was sent home. On the flight back, Reed Hastings wasn't sad. He was furious. That laughter fueled a decade of vengeance. Blockbuster doubled down on late fees. They ignored the internet. Netflix eliminated late fees. They built a recommendation algorithm. By 2007, Netflix launched streaming, the final nail in the coffin. Blockbuster finally tried to launch their own streaming service, but it was too little, and it was already too late. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. The stores that once lit up every street corner went dark. 9,000 stores, 60,000 employees, gone. Meanwhile, Netflix became a global superpower. Today, Netflix is worth over $200 billion. Blockbuster is reduced to a single nostalgic store in Oregon. The CEO who laughed, he lost his job and his legacy. It is the ultimate lesson in business hubris. If you don't cannibalize your own business, someone else will. Always remember, never laugh at the little guy. Look where he is now, over the moon. Please like and subscribe. We work hard for making informative videos for you. And if you like our work, please let us know in the comment.
Imagine being locked in a rubber cage, floating in the middle of a hostile desert. But the desert is made of water, and everything beneath you wants to eat you. This is the story of Steve Callahan and the longest survival drift in history. It started on a calm night in 1982, aboard his sailboat, the Napoleon Solo. Suddenly, a massive impact shook the hull. A whale, a shipping container, he never knew. Water flooded the cabin instantly. The boat was going down. Steve had seconds to act. He grabbed his survival bag and deployed the raft. He watched his home disappear beneath the Atlantic waves. He was alone, 800 miles from the nearest land. His inventory was terrifyingly small. 3 pounds of food, 8 pints of water. For the first week, hunger was the enemy. Then, it was thirst. He built solar stills to turn seawater into fresh water, drop by drop. But the ocean gives nothing for free. The sun began to cook him alive. His skin blistered. Saltwater sores covered his body. To survive, he had to become a predator. He learned to spear triggerfish that gathered under his raft. But the fish attracted bigger things. At night, sharks would bump the bottom of the rubber floor. A single bite would sink him. He was sleeping on a dinner plate. Day 43, disaster struck. The spear tips punctured the side of the raft. The air hissed out. His world began to collapse. For 10 days, he fought a losing battle to patch the hole. He began to hallucinate. He thought he saw people in the waves, but he refused to give up. He finally managed to seal the leak. Day 75. The color of the water changed. It wasn't deep blue anymore. It was green, coastal water. He saw birds, not just one, but a flock. He spotted a fishing boat on the horizon. He had no flares left. He could only wave. The fishermen saw the birds circling the raft. They pulled him aboard. He had lost a third of his body weight. He was covered in sores, unable to walk, but he was smiling. 76 days, 1,800 miles across the Atlantic. He he is the only man to survive that long, alone, on an inflatable raft. The ocean tried to break him, but the human spirit is waterproof. Subscribe for more stories of human survival.
At 2:45 p.m. on a sweltering July afternoon, a man stood alone in a parking lot.
He checked his watch. He paced. He was the most powerful labor leader in history. And in 15 minutes, he would vanish from the face of the earth. This is the final timeline of Jimmy Hoffa. The day began at Lake Orion, Michigan. It was a perfect summer morning. Hoffa kissed his wife goodbye. He said he'd be home for steaks at 4 o'clock. He got into his green Pontiac Granville. He loved that car. He was heading to a meeting that could save his career or end his life. He was meeting two men, Tony Giacalone and Tony Provenzano. They were the mob's heavyweights, and they were late. 2:15 p.m. Hoffa pulls into the Machus Red Fox restaurant. He parks his green Pontiac far from the entrance. He hates door dings. He gets out. The heat is oppressive. He waits. 2:30 p.m. Still no sign of the Tonys. Hoffa is furious. He walks to a payphone behind the hardware store next door. He calls his wife. His last words were, "They stood me up." 3:27 p.m. A maroon Mercury Marquis pulls into the lot. It stops right next to Hoffa. The passenger window rolls down. We believe Hoffa saw someone he trusted inside. Maybe his foster son, Chucky. Hoffa gets into the back seat. The car speeds away. That green Pontiac would sit there, unlocked, until the next morning. Hoffa was never seen again, but the FBI has a theory. The car drove just 7 minutes to a house on Walnut Lake Road. Hoffa walked into the kitchen, thinking he was attending a meeting. Instead, he was met with 2 bullets to the back of the head. The cleanup was immediate. The mob doesn't leave forensic evidence. But where is the body? This is where the legend begins. Theory 1, the Gateway Incinerator. They say he was burned to ash within an hour of his death. The Theory 2, maybe it was the compactor. His body was placed in a 50-gallon drum and crushed with a junk car. Theory 3, this is the most famous myth of all. Buried in the concrete of Giant Stadium in New Jersey. Decades later, the Mythbusters even scanned the ground. They found nothing. Jimmy Hoffa had simply evaporated. The FBI raided farms, dug up driveways, and tapped phones. But the code of silence, omerta, held strong. Hoffa was declared legally dead in 1982. He remains the ultimate ghost story of American labor. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe and share the video. We work really hard to create the videos. For now, it's a goodbye.
All right, let's get right into it. Just when you think the Jeffrey Epstein saga can't get any more twisted, Ghislaine Maxwell, from a prison cell, has just dropped an absolute legal bombshell. We're talking about stunning new claims in a court filing that could potentially blow this whole case wide open again. So today, we're going to unpack exactly what she's alleging, why she's doing it now, and what it could all mean.
So the big number you need to know is 25. According to Maxwell, there are 25, that's 25, accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein who managed to get secret settlements with victims' lawyers. I mean, that is just a staggering number. We are not talking about a couple of people who fell through the cracks. No. She's claiming there's a whole group of 24 individuals who were allegedly involved, but somehow kept their names completely out of the headlines.
But wait, it doesn't stop there. She also says there are 4 unnamed co-conspirators. Now, you gotta understand, that's a really important legal term. She's not just saying they were friends or associates. She's claiming they were actual partners in the criminal scheme.
who, and this is the key part, were never charged with a crime. So right out of the gate, she's pointing the finger at almost 30 other people. So the million-dollar question is, why is she doing this now? Why are all these bombshells dropping from a federal prison? Well, this isn't some random interview or press release. It's a very specific and, frankly, a pretty desperate legal maneuver. It's called a habeas corpus petition. Let's break down what that actually is. A habeas corpus petition is pretty much the last resort in the legal world. You can think of it as a legal Hail Mary. It's an argument that says, look, my entire conviction wasn't just wrong. It was so fundamentally unfair, so unconstitutional that you have to just throw the whole thing out. This is her final shot. There are no do-overs after this. And this slide really shows you why it's her last shot. She has tried everything else. Her first appeal of the conviction failed. Taking her case to the Supreme Court, they denied it. She has hit a brick wall, a legal dead end, at every single turn. And that brings us to this one final attempt. And this is where her argument gets really, really interesting. See, Maxwell isn't just making these vague claims about anonymous people. In this filing, she is calling out some very high-profile, very powerful figures by name. She specifically points her finger at two men, Leon Black and Les Wexner. According to her filing, Black's financial dealings with Epstein were so extensive that they basically funded the entire trafficking operation. And for Wexner, she claims he wasn't just on the sidelines, he was accused of actually participating in and witnessing the abuse himself. And she's not just making wild accusations, she's pointing to public information. She highlights Leon Black's very real $62.5 million settlement with the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, it's important to say Black never admitted any guilt, but he did pay that massive sum to make claims about his financial ties to Epstein go away. And that's not even the big number. Maxwell's filing also brings up a jaw-dropping $170 million that Black allegedly paid directly to Epstein over the years. And Black's explanation for this enormous amount of money? He claimed it was just for tax and estate planning. Right. Now, the source material we're working from points out another really interesting layer here, one that connects some of these powerful figures. It notes that Leon Black himself testified to Congress back in 2018 about a trip he took with Donald Trump to Russia in the 90s, where they apparently went to a strip club together. Just keep that little connection in the back of your mind because it might become pretty important later. So how does naming these men and throwing out these huge figures actually help her case? Well, it all boils down to one central legal argument she is trying to build. Her entire strategy hinges on this concept called selective prosecution. It's a defense where you basically argue that the government unfairly targeted you, and only you, while letting a bunch of other people who allegedly did the same exact thing just walk away. Her whole case is basically her shouting, "Why only me?" And this table just lays her argument out perfectly. On one side, you have Ghislaine Maxwell. She was labeled a co-conspirator, she was prosecuted, and she was convicted. On the other side, you've got these 29 other people she claims were accomplices and co-conspirators. And what happened to them? Either nothing at all, or they got these secret settlements. She's painting a very clear picture of what she sees as deeply unequal justice. And here is the legal linchpin, the absolute key to her argument. She is claiming that the prosecutors knew about all these other people, but they deliberately hid that information from her defense team. She's arguing her trial was a sham from the get-go because she was denied evidence that could have shown others were just as, if not more, involved than she was. But okay, let's step outside the legal weeds for a second. The source material for this explainer raises a really fascinating question. Is this all just a legal strategy? Or is there something else going on here? A hidden motive? Maybe even a coded message? And really, this is the core question we have to ask. Is Ghislaine Maxwell a principled defendant genuinely fighting for her freedom because she believes she was wronged? Or is she the master manipulator using this court filing to send a very clear, very loud message to powerful people, reminding them exactly what she knows and what she could say? The source speculates that by bringing up names like Leon Black, and then specifically mentioning his past association with Donald Trump, this could be a really calculated move, a way of signaling, hey, I have information you really wouldn't want to get out, all in the hopes of maybe securing a presidential pardon to guarantee her silence. You know, this whole thing brings us to a huge, lingering mystery in this entire saga. If these 25 secret settlements are real, as Maxwell claims, why on earth don't we know who these people are? What is keeping their identities so tightly under wraps? Well, the most likely answer comes down to two things: a lot of money and a wall of silence, enforced by non-disclosure agreements or NDAs. See, any settlement like this would come with an ironclad NDA. And breaking it, that's not just a breach of trust, it would trigger massive, financially devastating penalties. That legal and financial threat is a very, very powerful reason to keep your mouth shut. And so that's where we are right now. Is this filing the key that could finally unlock explosive new secrets about Epstein's entire network? Or is this just the last desperate gamble of a convicted woman in a story whose darkest truths might just stay sealed forever?
Las Vegas wasn't built by corporations. It was built by gangsters. Before the fountains and the influencers, there was just dust and danger. In 1946, a man named Benjamin Bugsy Siegel stood in that desert. Where others saw a wasteland, he saw a gold mine. He envisioned a luxury oasis that would trap tourists and empty their pockets. He called it the Flamingo, and he funded it with mob money. The East Coast bosses were skeptical. They thought Siegel was crazy. Construction was a disaster. Costs soared from $1 million to $6 million. Siegel was arrogant. He thought he was untouchable. But in the mafia, you don't lose the boss's money. June 1947, Siegel was reading a newspaper in Beverly Hills. A sniper fired through the window. Bugsy was gone. But his death didn't stop the dream. It accelerated it. The mob realized Siegel was right. Gambling was the ultimate racket. Throughout the 1950s, the families moved in. They owned the hotels, the unions, and the politicians. But the real money wasn't on the tables. It was in the count room, and this was called the skim. Before the taxes were calculated, the mob took their cut off the top. Millions of dollars, untraced, flowing straight to Chicago and New York. It was the perfect crime. The IRS had no idea. Frank Lefty Rosenthal ran the casinos with an iron fist. If you cheated the house, you didn't go to jail. Then the only place for the cheaters, you went to the desert. Vegas became the most segregated, regulated, and profitable city in America. But the mob got sloppy. They started fighting each other. Car bombs became common. The public started to get scared. And then the FBI started listening. They heard everything about the skim. Then came a new threat. Not the police, but a billionaire. Howard Hughes arrived in 1966. He bought the Desert Inn. He didn't want gangsters. He wanted corporations. The state of Nevada changed the laws to allow corporate ownership. Suddenly, the mob was being priced out of their own town. The FBI raids in the late 70s finished them off. The Flamingo is still there, but Bugsy wouldn't recognize it. Today, Vegas is run by Wall Street, not the Commission. The odds are still against you, but the owners wear ties now. But if you dig deep enough in the desert, you might still find the bones of the founding fathers. If you like more Syndicate stories, please tell us in the comments box below. Also, please like and subscribe. For now, it's a goodbye.